Monday morning at Georgia State University. Hey Jordan, how are you? Hi Michael, I am doing pretty good, glad we're finally done with that last exam. How are you? Yeah, me too. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I actually came across a case recently that caught my attention. Have you heard about the child sexual abuse scandal at Penn State? Yes, I'm familiar with it. Jerry Sandusky, a former assistant football coach, was charged with sexually abusing minors. What is especially interesting is how the public responded to the university officials involved. Many people criticized them for failing to report the abuse directly to law enforcement. Yes, it is troubling, but their reaction is understandable. If university officials were aware of abuse involving minors, they had a clear moral duty to report it. Under a deontological framework, that obligation exists regardless of institutional position. It also exists regardless of personal discomfort or professional inconvenience. While I understand that concern, however, the officials were also operating under professional role duties. From a deontological perspective, following established institutional procedures matters. Reporting concerns to superiors can be viewed as adhering to professional codes of conduct. I think that is where the ethical disconnect occurs. While professional roles matter, deontological ethics assumes an underlying moral duty that applies to everyone. Drawing from Kant, individuals have a duty to intervene when fundamental rights are at risk. This duty is especially strong when the victims are vulnerable, such as children. Kant does emphasizes moral duty, but Banks also highlights justice and universality. Ethical decisions should be applied consistently across similar situations. Institutional procedures exist to ensure fairness and due process. Acting outside those procedures can create ethical inconsistency. Consistency is important, but deontological ethics also recognizes that some duties are fundamental. According to Banks, moral rules and duties cannot be overridden when basic rights are violated. In this case, the rights and dignity of children. Banks also discusses role morality within deontological ethics. This means individuals have ethical obligations tied to their professional positions. University officials may have believed they were fulfilling their duty by reporting internally. Professional codes are important, but they are not meant to replace moral responsibility. Banks emphasizes respect for persons as a core principle of deontological ethics. This requires treating individuals as ends in themselves, not as means to protect an institution. By failing to report the abuse directly, the officials fail to fully respect the victims as persons with inherent rights. Deontological ethics also values justice and fairness. If every individual bypasses established procedures based on personal judgment, justice becomes uneven. Ethical universality requires that rules and processes apply equally, not selectively. Banks also acknowledges that deontological ethics can involve conflicting duties. When duties conflict, we must determine which duty carries greater moral weight. In this case, the duty to protect vulnerable children should have taken jurisprudence. I agree that this case highlights the limits of deontological ethics. While the officials may have believed they acted appropriately, strict adherence to procedure failed. It ultimately did not provide sufficient protection for the victims. Exactly. The Penn State case demonstrates that deontological ethics ultimately demands accountability. Moral rules, duties, and respect for persons exist to prevent harm, not excuse inaction. Overall, this case shows how difficult ethical decision-making can be when duties collide. Even within a deontological framework, determining priority is not always straightforward. I agree, and Banks makes that limitation clear. Still, deontological ethics requires us to prioritize duties tied to human dignity and basic rights. This discussion highlights both the strengths and weaknesses of deontological ethics. It also sets the stage for comparing it to other ethical frameworks, especially utilitarianism, which focuses more on outcomes than duties. Yes, I think that contrast will be a great transition into our next topic,